Hello, everyone, and welcome to Love to Hear It with Her Campus at UCF. I'm Chrissy, and today we are going to be talking about mental health, and we have a few girls here today that are going to be chatting with us. We have Grace, and we have Amber, and we have Alina. If you guys want to say hello.
Hi.
Howdy. So, as you guys know, this is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, so that's why we wanted to go into a little bit of a different topic today and discuss sort of what are the stigmas of mental health, what are the stigmas on suicide, and our own personal experiences on those subjects. So, Amber, if you want to start, I know that you are working with CAPS and that you have some resources for us that you're going to give us at the end. If you want to give us a little bit of information on your experience.
Of course. So I was talking about earlier, the reason I'm a psychology major and the reason that I got into psychology is my own personal experience with struggling with mental health. So mental health is an issue that runs in my family. It's actually genetic. So depression and anxiety are just something that, you know, my family has been suffering with for generations now. And when I was probably 14 when I first started experiencing symptoms of depression, and I had no idea what it was because it wasn't something that was talked about in my family, even though it was, you know, really popular in my family. So I started experiencing depression and anxiety when I was younger, and I ended up finding myself in an emotionally abusive relationship, which only further deepened my depression and, you know, really affected my self-confidence. It pretty much ripped the rug right out from under me as a preteen, going through all of it on top of it. And I ended up getting really isolated, which caused my social anxiety to amplify. And by the time I was graduating as a senior in high school, you know, suicide felt like one of the only options for me because I felt like I was suffering alone and I didn't have people because the relationship had caused me to isolate myself so severely that, you know, my friend group and my support group just wasn't there for me. And I'm, you know, blessed enough to have a family that supported me in going to therapy. I ended up going to therapy 3 times a week, trying multiple different medications to help curb, you know, anxiety and depression. And luckily, you know, college has been a better experience for me. I wouldn't say it's been like peachy keen because, you know, my first semester, my social anxiety was still really, really bad. And up until this year, overcoming that stuff was a huge challenge in my life. But I have managed to get to a place now where I like to share my experiences with other people so they don't feel like they're alone like I did when I was in high school.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad that you have gone to a place where you're able to talk with us today. That's awesome.
Of course. It's something I'm really passionate about, you know, mental health awareness and advocacy, so people understand that no matter what you're going through, because there's so many facets of mental health, you're not alone. There's a group out there for you to ease your pain and help with your suffering and, you know, just make you feel like you have someone to vent to, because therapy is really scary for a lot of people, especially like suffering from social anxiety like I did. Going to a therapist almost sounded scarier to me than suffering by myself. Like having to go and sit and like bleed myself dry in front of someone when I could barely call up a pizza place and ask for my order. It was really hard for me. And, you know, I hated therapy at first. I would call my mom and tell her, because I was still young at the time, be like, this isn't working. Like, I hate this, because it was so hard for me to break out of that shell. So I think with people with social anxiety, especially talking to a peer can seem a lot less scary than talking to an actual professional sometimes.
Well, I did also want to talk about therapy because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are struggling and there's a lot of stigma that is behind therapy.
Yes.
So, I don't know if you guys have any experience with going to therapy, Grace?
I've been in therapy multiple times now, because I moved around a lot as a kid, which is easy when you're a kid and everyone like wants to make friends, because it's so much easier to make friends when on a playground when you're like 6 than it is when you're 12 and you're like an awkward preteen girl or whatever. And so I had a really hard time adjusting, especially because I moved from overseas back to the States. So it was a culture shock thing, and I wasn't really fitting in. And so I started experiencing like really severe depression and anxiety because I wasn't fitting in. And my parents, like, they could tell that something was wrong, but they didn't know what was wrong. And so they kept putting me in therapy, but they were like diagnosing me with other things. They were like, yeah, it's like this thing, and none of the things they were diagnosing me with were correct. So my first couple of experiences in therapy, I wasn't really getting treated for what I actually needed to be treated for, and no one was providing me with answers or a diagnosis or anything. So my first few experiences were really rough. So by the time I like got to my senior year of high school, which was this past year, I didn't really even think of therapy as an option. I also was at a STEM boarding school, and so I was in Alabama, and my parents were in Texas. So it was a weird experience. So I didn't really feel like therapy was something I could do. And then I ended up in just like the worst spot, and I did attempt suicide twice a couple months ago, and so that was pretty hard. And I remember I got referred to a school counselor because I told one of my friends, and she was like, you need to get help. Like, this isn't just a thing you can talk about with friends. And at that point, I had been dismissing it for so long, and because I had never received a formal diagnosis, I was like, I mean, it's fine. Everything's fine, you know? And then I went and I talked, and he had to report me to, like, higher levels in the school, and I was referred to my parents, and at first I was so mad, but because of it, I got referred to therapy that actually helped me. They actually took in what I was saying rather than receiving like pre-notions from my parents or anyone else.
Right.
And so that was when I received a formal diagnosis of depression and anxiety. And at that point, like my therapist and I, we were so tight. Like she was really cool. And I didn't receive therapy from her for a while because I did have to go back to Texas for the summer. But she was great. Like we still email. Like when I told her I was moving, she was like, yeah, just like reach out to me if you ever need anything. And I also went to therapy over the summer, but I think therapy really is helpful because I love talking to my friends about it. Like I love, or just like being able to vent. Like I'm lucky enough to have friends and friendships that are strong enough that we can talk about things like that really matter, as well as dumb stuff like movies or whatever.
Right.
All the topics, but therapy is a really good, reliable source. And at some point, I'm definitely gonna take advantage of the CAPS resources that I know you're going to talk about later, because I think that's just a wonderful, like therapy is a really wonderful outlet.
Definitely. I think therapy is a journey for sure.
Yeah.
It's not like you set an appointment and you go and you're better. It is a journey, and I'm so glad that your journey had a happy ending. I know that it doesn't sound like it was, it was a rocky road, but I'm so glad that you made it out on the other side. That's so awesome to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of people, when they first start therapy, they think it's like clean cut, kind of the same journey when people start medication. They think, I'm going to go to a therapist, they're going to help me, and I'm going to get better. And it's like, no matter how much you feel that way, therapy is with a person, and no matter how qualified that person is, if you don't connect and say like best friends like you were with your therapist, I was the same way with mine. She had young daughters who were suffering from mental health issues, and I could really relate, and she could connect and talk to me like another human being rather than with other therapists where I feel like I'm kind of sitting back and like being analyzed. I wanted to have a conversation, a discussion about my feelings and what's going on, not someone to be like, well, this and this is happening with you, because I would have people misdiagnose me as well. And it's like, if you're not caring enough to deepen the conversation, then why am I even here? And it can be really discouraging to people to have an experience where it gets to the point where when you attempt suicide, that's the only way people take it seriously.
Right. What about you, Alina?
Well, actually, my first experience with therapy comes from CAPS at UCF, so I know like you're going to talk about that later, but I think they're matching, like the way that they match you is really, really good. Like the therapist they gave me in the spring was like, she kind of knew everything I was going through. She was like a Latina woman who was queer, and like she like knew all the kind of anxieties that I was going through. And I hadn't thought about therapy before until I was in abnormal psych, and my TA was talking about how therapy is like really good, and he thinks that like everyone should go no matter if you have mental illnesses or not. And then I talk about it in the article that I have being published later this week. A little shameless plug there. But I went through this really weird, long grieving process this past year, and it kind of like opened up a lot of things that I didn't know I could have, or like feelings that I didn't know I had about certain things. And I had like this little mental breakdown, and my friends all like, you need to go to therapy, and I was like, okay, maybe you're right. And then I scheduled the appointment with CAPS, and CAPS did a great job, and I like you guys are so right about how therapy's like it's like this really long process, because I was doing fine in the spring, like after going to CAPS a couple times, and then like in the summer I wasn't going to CAPS anymore because I was home, and it kind of like had this little downfall, and now I'm trying to go back, and it's like this
you slip
weird
back
process.
into it.
Yeah.
It's a mental health is a lifelong process.
Yeah.
No matter, I mean, I can stand on my own 2 feet now and feel secure in my mental stability, but there are things that still rock me. I mean, there are things that I go through, or reminders of the time where I was in a really dark place, and it can still get to me. And it's just, you're always going to be working to better yourself, and you can get to a place that's great. And I'm a psychology major, and I really believe that every person going to therapy would make a more cohesive world, because not only do therapists assist with mental health issues, but communication skills. I mean, being able to communicate with other people is the basis of being a human being, and if you didn't have parents or loved ones that taught you those skills, then you're lacking in a big part of your life, and therapy is something that can help you with that. It's not only, you know, like the stigma around therapy makes you feel like it's only for people that are quote unquote crazy, and it's not true. That's not, it's for people that are normal and level-headed too.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to my sister on the phone the other day, and like with your family, like we do have mental health issues in my family as well, and she's the only one of us who like hasn't been to therapy, and in a weird way she almost like prides herself on it. She's like, well, I don't have issues, like I've never been to therapy, and I'm like, that's not true. Like everyone has something that bothers them and that they need to talk about, and so you're not, I mean, because she doesn't look down on people who've been in therapy, but she's like, yeah, I mean, because I've never been to therapy, I'm fine. It's like, that's not the relationship, though. It's not a causation thing. And so that was an interesting conversation, and just trying to discuss that with her, because I was like, yeah, that's not the right perspective to have on it, I don't think.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what would you guys tell somebody who is struggling and they've considered therapy, but they're apprehensive about making that step?
I think the biggest thing I would do is listen. You know, having people be able to tell you their story and just like go through it is a big part of what therapy is, talking.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are afraid of therapy because of the stigma around it. And you know, there's plenty of people like me with severe social anxiety, where it's the aspect of actually dragging yourself in and talking to someone that you don't know well. That's scary. But the thing is, there's going to be a lot of things in your life that are scary, and if it comes down to suicide or seeing a therapist and that's what's scaring you, living your life is more important than, you know, being afraid. Like, you have to find the value in yourself and, you know, care about yourself enough to be able to push yourself to go to therapy, because even when you're in that low point where you are really thinking about, you know, not wanting to be on the planet anymore, it can get better. And it sounds so cheesy, and I hate saying that to people, because it's such a blanket statement. And when people would say that to me when I was depressed, I'm like, you're a liar, like you're lying to me. It doesn't get better, like life sucks and then you die. That's just what it is. But it's not true. Like, from someone who has personally been through the ringer, like, it can get better, and whether that's in a small way or a big way, any progress is progress. And finding that peace of mind for yourself can be the most freeing and liberating experience.
Absolutely, you're so right.
Yeah.
I think something else is, I think people think that going to therapy can be seen as a weakness. Like, oh, I need assistance, so I'm too weak to, you know, handle this on my own. But it took me a while to realize that going to therapy takes so much strength.
Yes.
That is the ultimate strength, is saying, like, there's something wrong with me, like, I need help, and going and getting that help. I think that some people are, you know, I don't want to say like in denial, but maybe, you know, struggling with coming to terms of how serious their issues are, and they don't want to come to terms with it. But seeing that and recognizing like, I need help, that's a strength. And I think that making that step, I think, really shows just how strong you are. And so that's my personal 2 cents for anyone out there. For you guys, it sounds like you guys have each had your own personal experiences. What is something that you wish that you had known when you were going through it?
Gosh. There is such a long list
Yeah.
of things that I wish I had known. I wish, the public education system hadn't failed me with, topics of mental health. When I was
Absolutely.
depressed, I just thought that was normal. Like, a lot of the times, I thought that was part of life because so many of my friends were depressed as well and, like, just going through it, that I thought, wanting to die was just a part of living. And I was never educated to think otherwise. I had never been given information about what depression is, what the symptoms look like, what anxiety looks like. I just was so undereducated. It makes me disappointed now looking back and seeing like I could have been able to help myself and those around me sooner if I just would have known.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also wish that I had understood like the stakes, like the fact that there really are people out there who are going to be affected by it, because that was a big thing. Because after like I attempted suicide and I like told people about it, they were like, "Oh my God!" And of course everyone's reaction was very intense. And when I talk to people now who are like at that point, I'm like, you don't understand how many people are genuinely going to be affected by like what's happening to you, and the fact that of course like the focus should be on you, like you shouldn't be trying to work on yourself or get better for anyone else, but like it is very important to know that you have a support system, or that you can reach out and find a support system. Also, I wish I had known that you can like look for different therapists, because that's a big, like as we were talking and I was like, I knew I wanted to come back to that, but like that was a big thing that my parents kept emphasizing when I was going to therapy this past year, because they were several states away, and they're like, if it's not working, like let us know and we will switch you around. And luckily I hit it like nail on the head first go, and that was wonderful.
Yeah.
But there are some people that you're just not going to click with, where they are analyzing you and misdiagnosing you, and they can't relate to what you're saying, or don't have a full grasp, or they're just too quick to jump to conclusions. And so I think it's really important to know that you need to seek whatever help is genuinely going to be best for you. You can't just go through the motions with someone and say, I'm going to therapy, because if they're not helping at all, then what are you doing?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think for me, it would be like trying to get past all the stigma about it, like that you mentioned, because there is such a stigma around going to therapy and like mental illness, and it really, really sucks, especially because it comes a lot from the older generation. And like you guys had such supportive families, because like they knew what you were going through at like on some level. Like it was, like you said, for you it was genetic, but like growing up in a Hispanic household, like they don't really like they don't believe in mental illness, and it's like there's like this whole stigma around it where it's like you could just like you're just sad, like get over it type of thing.
A lot
like
of
there's
tough
like
love.
a lot of tough love.
Pray it away.
Yeah,
It'll
exactly.
get better.
And it's like there's already the stigma surrounding like when you're in high school, or like when you're like still like a young adult, like now, where you say you go to therapy and people are kind of like, oh, interesting, like as if you're crazy, or like as if it's contagious or something. But then like it's a whole other thing when it's coming from your family, and it's like I don't want to tell them that I'm going to CAPS, or I don't want to tell them that I'm going to therapy, because they're just not going to get it. And they don't understand like anxiety or depression and things like that, because my sister also went through it, but she was younger, and I didn't realize that like that might have been something I was going through when I was younger, until I started going to therapy now. And it was like, oh, when I was younger I felt like this overwhelming numbness and like nothingness, and that's kind of not good,
So what sort of, and I think that there's a lot of people out there that might be suffering from mental illness that don't know it, because like you said, Amber, it's
Lack of
very
education.
normalized.
Yes.
So what sort of symptoms did you guys experience?
Oh my gosh. I mean, my biggest one was isolation. I confined myself to my room. I think I watched like 6 seasons of Grey's Anatomy in like 1 month. I mean, that's a warning sign. You shouldn't be in your room that much. I stopped talking to people. I mean, just a lack of wanting to live life. I no longer felt the need to go out and be that person that I knew I was. Like, I didn't want to talk to my friends. I didn't even want to reach out to my family. Like, everything was exhausting for me. It was just the littlest things, even thinking about getting up and going to school was physically exhausting. I didn't want to do it. And for my social anxiety, I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced a panic attack, but it is a full physical embodiment of mental illness. My chest would feel like it was collapsing in. I would genuinely think I was having a heart attack because my heart would start beating so fast. I'd be sweating, like I would have to like curl into a corner in a ball just to get my sanity back, because I genuinely felt like my skin was going to melt off my bones because that's how bad my anxiety was. And it would be little things that would set me off. Replaying a conversation in my head where I felt like I no longer said the right thing, I would have a full-blown panic attack. And it's just those symptoms in people. If you see someone isolating themselves, if you see someone, you know, having a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of panic, it's always reaching out as a good thing. Because even if they're like, no, I'm okay, like I was just having an off day, I mean, wouldn't you rather reach out to someone if you see symptoms than regret it later if that person's actually going through something?
Absolutely.
So retweet literally all of that. Like 100%. That was really like what I've gone through and what I experienced. And I think on top of isolation, just like a sense of numbness. Like that's a huge thing, because even when I was like 12 or 13, and it was right after we had moved back to the States, and my parents just noticed this incredibly sharp decrease in energy, and they were like, "What? Why don't you want to go out anymore? Why don't you want to do anything?" And it was that exhaustion that you were talking about, just that feeling like I had to drag myself to do literally anything. That was a big thing, and just feeling like I had no stakes. Like I've already mentioned stakes, but just feeling like, because it was so numb, like recklessness was okay.
Yes.
And like 100%, like for me, being depressed meant like a lot of recklessness, and for anxiety, of course, it is like the panic attacks. 100%. I've had my fair share of those, and that's a big thing. And overthinking things, like it feels like your mind is just going 1,000 miles a minute, just trying to figure out, prepare yourself for situations and come up with a bunch of regrets for past things. And I just thought that was normal. I was like, yeah, everyone stresses out about being like the first one to get up and turn in a test, or like having to call someone to make a hair appointment. And but those things, because there is a lack of education, people will normalize it. But those were a lot of my symptoms, and of course just everything you said.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with more, not that depression and anxiety aren't serious, but more hard mental illnesses like, you know, schizophrenic and bipolar disorder, multiple personality disorder, there are plenty of warning signs that are not similar to anxiety and depression. There are plenty of things to look for, especially as a psychology major. They teach you from the age of 18 to 21 is the biggest area for a mental break, whether it be schizophrenic or you're starting to experience the onset of bipolar disorder. There are plenty of signs, and you can literally Google it. This information is available to everyone, because there are a lot of people in society where they think those diseases are condemning you for the rest of your life and you're no longer going to be a functional member of society, and that's not true. I know plenty of people who have those disorders. I know plenty of people who are still functioning members of society, and they have serious mental health issues like schizophrenia. I mean, you can still function and you can still see those signs. It's not always going to be someone talking to the voices in their head. There are plenty of early onset signs to look for with those diseases as well.
Definitely. Alina, do you have any symptoms that you want to share?
I think I agree with you guys, like the numbness, the isolation. I think those were really big ones for me, and it's like I remember one time over the summer, I literally laid in bed for like 30 minutes just staring at the wall, and I was like, you know what? Something might be wrong. Like, I think I should get out of bed, maybe figure something out, because it's like it kind of just starts as like this little feeling of like nothingness or numbness, and then it turns into me waking up in the morning and being like, I don't want to leave my room, so I'm just gonna pretend that I don't exist while all my roommates are eating breakfast outside, or like a lack of eating is something that I do all the time. Like, being in college, your diet kind of changes a lot, but like when I'm going through it, I guess I just kind of don't eat, and I'm just like sit in my room and I'm like, I feel like I could be hungry, but also that sounds like a lot of work, so I'm not gonna go eat. And it's like, you shouldn't do that, but like here I am doing that.
Yeah, when I was first experiencing depression, I dropped 25 pounds in the matter of a month. You know, I had the stress of being in an emotionally abusive relationship, and that relationship had just ended for the first of many times. And I literally stopped eating. I had to have, my family, my grandma, who was my biggest support system, had to force me to eat. She would literally force me to eat because I lost so much weight, and it wasn't even like I'm hungry, like not like an eating disorder where, you know, you're hungry and something inside you is telling you that eating food is bad. It was just like I was so over it. I mean, literally so exhausted that eating food was not even relevant to my mind.
It didn't even wouldn't even cross your mind.
I think once I went like a week and I had maybe a single meal, but like not even the full meal. It was like half a meal because I started eating and then I just got tired.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I can't finish this. I'm tired. My stomach is tired. I'm going to bed.
Yeah. I think something I also wanted to mention is that, like, at least with my own journey, I always felt like I'm suffering, but surely other people are suffering more, and mine isn't as bad, so like I should just deal with it. And I think that people need to realize, like, even if you're experiencing just a few of these symptoms, or if you are experiencing like these symptoms, but like at a very at a minimal sort of intensity, that you should still see about getting help. There is nothing wrong with I still eat and I still go out with my friends, but I feel sad and I feel like frustrated and so on and so on. You should still address that. That's still something that's very important. Like, it could be worse, but it is still bad, and you should still get help.
That goes back to like what we were talking about earlier, where people will only take mental health seriously if you've attempted suicide.
Right.
And a part of what I'm passionate about, why I got into psychology, I don't want people to feel that way. You shouldn't only be validated in your feelings if you've attempted to take your life. Like, that is the means to an end. Like, if we're as a society letting people get to the point where they're wanting to take their lives, and that's only then are we validating someone, only then more people are gonna think that's the option, that's how to get taken seriously. Like, this is what I need to do to get those steps pushed forward, to get me to get help. Like, not everyone that is trying to commit suicide is actually trying to take their life. Some people are doing it as a call for help. Like, they're trying so hard to help themselves and they feel like there's no more options, and maybe this is how things can change, because it's so sad that you can walk into a therapist's office and they won't take you seriously unless you've told them you've attempted suicide. I mean, I personally feel like we should be so far away from that as a society with all of the progress we made, and it really makes me so sad to think about the fact that people aren't taking mental health seriously still to this day. No one thinks it's a problem, especially in women. People will tell you all the time, you're being dramatic. You're being dramatic.
Oh my god.
This isn't a real problem. Like, you're not depressed. You're PMSing. It's like, no, I'm not PMSing. I am chronically depressed. I've been diagnosed. You're not going to invalidate my feelings because I'm a woman. And a lot of the time, it makes me so frustrated when I hear things like that.
Absolutely.
And you're so right about how society, to this day, we don't take it as seriously as we should. It's like when 13 Reasons Why came out, or when a celebrity commits suicide. It's on Twitter, on the internet, everyone's all here are the warning signs for depression, or for someone who's trying to kill themselves, or you need to pay more attention to your friends. Everyone's tweeting all these things, but then your best friend's sitting there showing you all these signs and you're not doing anything. And then that only goes on for a week and then everyone's over it.
It's 800,000 people a year in the US commit suicide. It's not a small number. This is something that needs to be discussed. And this is something, and not even only the topic of suicide, but mental health advocacy and making sure that stigma is gone. It's obsolete. I don't want any stigma. I want people from the womb feeling like it is okay if I'm struggling and my feelings are validated and I can seek help.
Absolutely.
And you shouldn't have to have gone through it or be going through it to actually care about people that are going through it, you know?
You should
be actively trying to get rid of the stigma surrounding mental illness, like as someone who like is quote unquote normal or like doesn't go through that, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, another really big stigma is like this cause of your depression. Like like shortly before I like attempted suicide, my boyfriend and I had broken up. So everyone was like, "Oh, so you did it like because you're alone, because you think you're gonna die alone?" And I was like, "No," because for me that was just a really big trigger because I lost like a significant source of like emotional support in my life, and so it made it a lot harder to have to confront the things that I'd already been struggling with for years. And so even as a person who had attempted suicide, I would go into settings and people would be like, "So you did it because you like went through a tough breakup?" Like, really?
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing. And like you were saying, like PMS and stuff, and that's a whole other issue. But yeah, a lot of people, even when you are showing signs like that, even then they can try to question it. Like it's there's such a sense of denial and belittlement regarding mental health, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, that personal experience, I've even had my own sister, and I love her to death. She's my rock. But when I was going through it, she thought it was because I got broken up with, because I got dumped. She literally like said to me like, "Oh, so you want to kill yourself because of a boy?" And it's like, no, that is not why. Like, there are so many reasons deeper. Like, is, you know, my terrible, unhealthy relationship adding on to that pile? Yes. But is it the cause of my depression? No. And sometimes people have those blinders on where they're looking for a clear-cut cause, and it's not always that way. Like me, I have situational and genetic depression, so genetically, like, there's a misbalance in the chemicals in my brain that causes me to fall into depression or experience symptoms of anxiety, and people are always wanting to look for a reason, and it's not always that clear-cut. There's a lot of different aspects of mental illness that can be contributing to what you're seeing in a person.
Definitely. And I think something else that you guys were just talking about is like how people who aren't going through a mental illness, how they treat people who are. How do you guys, what are some things that people have done that have helped and have not helped? Like, what do you wish that, you know, the people around you had done, or what are some things that people have done that have really benefited you?
I think, I mean, like you were saying earlier, listening is so important, because for me, even going to therapy isn't just a matter of, because of course therapy does provide solutions, but for me it was such an amazing experience just to be able to talk and just like unleash the beasts and like just go for it. And so I think listening is something that's really, really crucial, because a lot of the time you reach points like I reached because you bottle things up. And so it's really important to just take the cork out of the bottle and just go. So I think being able to be a good listener is really important as a friend of someone who's struggling, and just showing that you're going to be there for them, just 100%. Like, my roommate and I in my STEM boarding school, like, she was amazing. Like, I would have a really bad day and she'd be like, "You want to order a pizza and watch Netflix?" And I was like, "Yes!" And so just knowing that, like, being supportive and listening, I think, are really, really important, if not broad.
I think it's also important to, like, make sure you're going at the person's pace, because, like you said, being able to, like, having someone there to listen to you is great, but, like, if they're coming at you with all these questions, or, like, coming at you with, like almost making it feel like an intervention, it's not helpful. And, like, I know for my friends, like, if they get really, really concerned, sometimes they'll all come at me with, like, "Hey, I'm really worried about you," and it's like, yes, I get you're worried, and I appreciate that you're worried, but you telling me that's not helping. Like, I don't want you to worry, and so, like, just let me come to you. But at the same time, like, sometimes people won't do that, so you have to, like, pick and choose who needs that little push and who doesn't.
It's a very delicate line, but I think, like, exactly what you're saying, just like being a friend that, you know, let me come to you, but just let me know that you're open for whenever I need that.
And I think the steps thing is a really important part of the process, and my biggest thing that I tell people is, when you see the person that's struggling is at the appropriate step to talk about getting professional help, always suggested, because at the end of the day, a friend is amazing and it's great, but you are not a professional. And sometimes people will suggest things to you that are absolutely wrong, because every person is individual, and how they're feeling and their symptoms and their manifestation of their mental illness is going to be different than every other case of depression and anxiety. Every other case of whatever you're experiencing is going to be different in every person. So having a friend give you advice is amazing. It's beautiful, and having that companionship is so healthy for people who are struggling. But getting the licensed opinion of a professional is, you know, the best thing. I wouldn't use the word best thing, because there's different aspects for everyone. But it is a good starting point. And getting there and being able to find the strength to see someone is what needs to happen. And having, you know, a friend suggest things to you that might be harmful is, at the end of the day, going to be detrimental to you.
Definitely.
I think that's a good point to bring up, is that like symptoms are different for every person, because we're all sitting here and like we relate to each other's symptoms, like we somehow are lucky enough to like completely understand the symptoms we've all gone through. But just because like someone listening going through doesn't have these symptoms doesn't mean that they don't have other symptoms, because like for some people, like I would lock myself away and like isolate myself and probably sleep all day. Like I remember I slept for like maybe 3 days straight, like taking melatonin, putting myself to sleep, because I just didn't want to like be awake and like doing anything. But for some people, like if they're actually going through it, they are up all the time. Like they don't go to sleep, they go out, like they participate in reckless behavior.
Drugs and alcohol use in people who are suffering from depression and anxiety are a big sign. I mean, a mental illness-driven addiction is a huge thing. People will find that crutch and they will grab onto it for dear life, and they will see it as a means to an escape. And so if you see someone suffering with that, you know, getting into alcohol, getting into drugs, or like you stated earlier, just reckless behavior, putting yourself in harm's way that's extremely unnecessary, that's another symptom of it too. And some people will be like, oh, they're in college, like you're supposed to go to a party every single night, and it's like, no,
it's not supposed to be, it's not supposed to be a crutch. It's not supposed to be a way to just sort of block out everything that's going on inside you,
to numb yourself. Like that's not where you need to find that support.
Definitely. And I think I wanted to say something too. Like when I was going through it, I actually was overactive. So I was excelling in my academics. I was involved in this and this and this because I was so focused on keeping myself busy. So the busier I was, the less I would have time to focus on like my mental health issues. So I, excelled in everything else. And so to the outsider, it might have looked like, oh, she's like doing really great. But if you sat down and like tried to talk to me about, anything else, like about my personal life, like I would just break down into tears. So I think people out there who are, maybe you are excelling, but, take some time for yourself and,
self-care.
Self-care. Look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, am I okay? Yeah. Because maybe to everyone else it looks like you are, but you know.
I always say you never know who is suffering in silence.
Yes.
There are a lot of people who can't find it in themselves to reach out, and that is okay. You don't always need to. Sometimes the people looking out for you in your life will reach out to you, like you said. It's different for every person, but there was a really long time where I didn't talk to anybody about what I felt and my suffering because I thought it would make me look weak. And I kept it to myself and I didn't talk about it, and I was probably in the darkest place that I had ever been in my life, just bottling it up and staying to myself. So you never know who is suffering, and that's why I say you always have to speak and act in kindness in everything you do. Because no matter, that person that yelled at you in the restaurant, maybe they're having problems too. There's always a reason behind behavior, and a lot of the time when people are acting out, it's because they're suffering in their own right. So I always tell people, speak and act in kindness. Everything you do, it's so important to be nice to people.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I used to do, because at my school, like, everyone thought of me, like, I was always smiling, like, I would walk around smiling, and I was, like, very friendly to, like, in new students and stuff, and so, like, a lot of people were able to come and talk to me. So one thing that I would start doing is, like, I would displace my own issues by helping other people with theirs. Yes, okay, I'm glad that's
avoid.
Yeah, and so, like, I remember at one point, what the, like, first time I really noticed that was what I was doing was I was, like, sobbing in my room, and then one of my friends texted me and was like, yeah, I need help, and I, like, jumped up, and I was like, I gotta go help them, and my roommate was like, you're crying, like, you need to focus on you, and I was, but I need to help other people, and so that's a really big thing, because, like, a lot of people will maybe not even recognize that you're going through it because you're seen as, like, the stable one who's, like, a listening ear or, like, a shoulder to cry on. And so that's another really big thing, like, displacement of issues making you look like you're okay. Like, even now I have people talk to me and they're like, yeah, how do you get through it? And I'm like, oh, I'm still going through it. Like,
I'm still there.
Yeah. You never, like, you know, are like, I'm better now. Like, that is, you might feel that way, you know, some days, but it's a journey, it's a process, and I think that's important to realize. And I think something else is that it's okay to be selfish.
Yes.
Being selfish is okay.
Yes.
That took me a long time to come to terms with. And I think once you realize, like, it's okay to take care of myself and to, like, you know, flake on my friends and to just, you know, do what I need to do for myself.
Yeah. And self-care is different for literally everyone. Like, I had a really long week last week, and I was like, you know what? I'm really tired. I'm just gonna chill and sit in and watch movies and YouTube, like, all day, like, in my bed, just comfortable. And for me, like, that's self-care because I'm introverted, which doesn't mean that I'm shy. It just means I get my energy from, like, alone time.
Right.
And so for me, like, that was self-care. I just had a really chill weekend where I did some stuff, like, so I felt like I was accomplished with, like, homework and stuff, but for the most part, I just, like, relaxed. But for some people, self-care is going out with friends, so it's just it's whatever is best for you. So you do have to take that time to evaluate, like, what do I need to do, like, to feel better right now for me.
And trying different options is important. You know, not everything works the first time. Like with the therapist, it doesn't always work the first time. So getting into new things, finding new passions, finding new hobbies, you know, it's always gonna be something that's good for you.
Yeah, definitely. And so the last thing I want to talk about is, I know that all of us have gone through it, and we've all done and, like, sort of taken advantage of the resources that we have and grown so much. So with that, what are some of the things that you have been able to accomplish, or what are some of the things that you've been doing now that you have been able to better your mental health? Like, have you been able to, you know, go out more? Have you been able to excel in your academics? Have you been getting into, like, healthy relationships? Like, what has getting help done for you?
Oh my gosh. So joining Her Campus was one of the biggest steps for me I've ever taken. And I found so much pride in it because my social anxiety my freshman year of college got to the point where I would spend 6 days locked in the apartment by myself with no human contact other than my boyfriend. I would not leave, and if you tried to get me out of the apartment, I would have a panic attack just thinking about human interaction because that's how bad. And now I'm in a group of amazing and inspiring young women, and it is so great to be able to look back and think about how far I've come and just how really taking care of myself and taking that time to love myself has made me an even better person and has made me take strides in my life that I didn't think was accomplishable a year ago. Like, I never thought I would be here talking about my issues to help other people. I never thought that would be an option for me because I was so scared of even having a conversation with someone. So I'm so happy and proud of myself for, like, taking the step to, like, join Her Campus, and I've already met so many amazing people, and it's just, like, it's so great. It makes me smile every time I think about it. I love it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think joining Her Campus or, like, any club is, like or coming out of my shell in any kind of way is something that has started more recently and, like, probably is a product of me, like, actually getting help and, like, feeling more comfortable, like, doing this podcast, like, talking about it is something that I never would have done, like, in spring semester or anything like that. And I think another big thing for me I think going to therapy kind of made me realize that a lot of anxiety I had surrounded me being queer, like me not understanding like what exactly I was going through, like not knowing a label if I needed one, if I wanted one, things like that. And now like I'm living here in Orlando, all my friends know that like I'm queer, that I like that I'm like this person, and like they don't hate me for it, and like the fact that I can like be living here and I'm out, and it's like a
Living
big stress relief.
authentically.
Yes,
Yeah.
like living authentically as myself and like as whoever I want to be, and growing as that person, I think was a really big step for me.
That is so beautiful. Love that.
I think for me, the main thing that I got from my mental health journey was just learning how to handle myself. Like that was, like I was saying with the self-care, like learning to practice self-care was so hard for me because I don't want to be selfish. And that's a really
Yes.
big thing, a big anxiety of mine is that if I do anything for myself, I'm being selfish, I'm not serving others. And I think just coming to the realization that I am like an ultimate priority to myself was a really, really big step for me that I couldn't have come to if I hadn't gone through everything that I've gone through. And so I think that was the biggest thing that I got from that, and just realizing that it is okay and necessary for you to be good to yourself and aware of who you are and what you need.
That's awesome. So, on a last note, is there anything you guys want to share to anyone that's out there that might be struggling? Any words of encouragement?
Life can always get better.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, even people who are at their best and they're feeling themselves and they're living their life, like there's always room for improvement in every aspect of who you are. And again, it sounds really cheesy, trust me, I know, and it's like the worst thing to say to someone who's going through it, but it really can get better.
Yeah.
And it really, like, it will, especially to my young people out there. Life is rough, especially growing up, like, it's part of being young, having it rough and like just going through it, and it gets better. I'm not saying adulting is amazing, but it does get easier.
I think definitely like don't be afraid to go out and get help, or like just to go out and talk to somebody. Like you don't have to be going through it to get therapy or to go to therapy. Like my TA in the spring was saying that like if you go, every person should go once a year just to like unleash anything that they've been feeling and like haven't been able to talk to their friends about. Like I feel like we should definitely just not be scared of like going out and getting help, or going out and talking to your friends, or like a trusted adult, a therapist, like things like that, like 100%.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a big thing is just recognizing that whatever you're going through is valid in whatever
Yes.
form it's taking, whether or not you do feel like you need to see a professional or not. Just whatever you're going through, don't compare it to what anyone else is going through, like your friend or just anyone you know. It's yours. Your mental health is yours, and it's positive, it's negative, it's whatever it is at that time, and you need to just recognize that it's yours and own it.
It's
And
not a competition.
yeah, it's not a competition.
competition.
And
You don't get better, worst mental health award. Like, you don't always have to be suffering the worst out of your friend group to be suffering.
yeah, whatever you're going through, it's completely valid. If you're not okay, it doesn't matter why you're not okay. It's just you're not okay, and that's what needs to be addressed by you and by a professional, or just whoever you reach out to for help. Whatever you're going through, don't belittle it. It's valid.
Awesome. Well, I gotta say, you guys, like, really just, I love everything that you all had to say today, and I want to thank you guys for being here. That's so awesome, and I'm sure that a lot of girls and a lot of people out there listening are gonna take your words to heart, so thank you.
Do you want me to
Of
talk
course.
about the CAPS resources?
Definitely. So Amber
Right.
here will wrap up by telling us about the UCF CAPS resources.
Yes, so I am blessed enough to be a counseling and psychological services peer educator, also known as CAPS. So I work with the community at UCF to outreach to the students to make sure those who are suffering with mental health are aware of the resources that we have. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about a few of the different options, all of which I am listing below are free to UCF students, which is amazing. It's a great thing that our campus offers. So first I will talk about TAO, so it's therapy assisted online. So this is it's really for anybody. You can use it. So there's like an enrolled version of the program where you're actually going to talk to a therapist online after you do modules, and then there are some where it's just self-help and self-care modules. So this can be an amazing resource for someone who has severe social anxiety, and seeing someone in person just isn't your cup of tea. Go online, the CAPS website, TAO, it's TAO. You can enroll for free. You don't even have to finish it if it's not for you, but there are so many resources online, especially that one, that can help you. And it's a part of UCF. Like I said, it's on our CAPS website. So take a look at it if you think in-person therapy isn't something that you're interested in, or it's just a step you're not ready to take yet. That's totally fine. So we also offer on-campus, in-person therapy for students. So the first thing you're going to do is you can call CAPS, go in person, or go online to set up your initial assessment. So pretty much they'll have you go through a questionnaire detailing your symptoms, see what the manifestations of your mental illness is going to look like, or just if you're troubled, you don't have to have a mental illness to be able to go see a therapist like we were talking about earlier. So we have an abundance of options of different types of therapies that you can go to. You can get one-on-one therapy with a counselor. You can go to group therapy. We also have couples counseling as well as crisis counseling too for people that it's emergent that you need to see someone. We also have life coaching for people who are interested in just maybe you're feeling like you're shifting off your track a little bit and you just want to get back on track. We have life coaching for students at UCF. It's another free resource we have. So we also do offer a psychiatrist at UCF, which is a person that's going to prescribe you medication, which is different from a psychologist. So what you're going to do for that is you're going to set up your appointment just the same as you would if you're just going to see a regular psychologist. They'll do the initial assessment, and then they can recommend you over to the psychiatry center in our health services. So we also offer people, maybe you were coming from out of state and you used to get your medication from a psychiatrist back at home, and now you need to find the options available at UCF. We have that too for people who they're already on the track of medication, or people who are maybe interested in seeing it as an option for themselves. So that's something that we do. And we also have a hotline for people who it's an emergency for them. They need to talk to someone now. It's kind of like a suicide helpline, but it does go directly to UCF. So you can call our number just on our website. It's right there. You'll call it. If it's after hours, it will give you like a little automated box, and it'll tell you which button to press to get to the hotline. There is someone there that will talk to you 24 hours a day. If you're alone by yourself and it's 3 a.m. and you're, breaking down and you just need someone to talk to, there's a trained professional on the other end of that phone. You don't need to be alone. You can get help no matter what time of day it is. And just talking to someone can sometimes settle your mind. I'm not saying it's going to be as great as like talking to a therapist in person or all that, but just finding that peace of mind to be able to talk yourself off of a ledge from where you're at, it can be really helpful. So don't underestimate the power of a crisis hotline. I know sometimes, and the thing is, like, a crisis to you is a crisis to you. So if you feel like you're in crisis, then you're in crisis. You don't need to be on the verge of, committing suicide to call. Like, if you're going through it, you're going through it, and what it is valid, and just call. It never hurts to have someone there for you. So we also have a bunch of beautiful weekly therapy groups that meet. There are plenty. I know you were talking about finding your LGBTQ identity. We have a therapy group for that. We have therapy groups for each ethnicity, because having those cultural differences can, like you were talking about earlier with family, can be very scary to see a therapist based on what your family is going to think or something like that. We have all types of that stuff. And something that I'm going to plug myself, that's not a part, well, we do have Mindfulness Mondays at CAPS, but I'm going to do this as something that has personally helped me with my mental health. Mindfulness, please look into it. I'm begging you. Live mindfully. Living in each moment has helped me reduce my social anxiety tremendously. Living, thinking about how happy I am in each moment and not constantly stressing myself about the future, about what comes next, or about the past, what I said to someone that I might regret now, or just stuff that gets me amped up. Living mindfully is beautiful. Meditation is also another holistic approach that I use personally to help decrease my social anxiety. It keeps me aware in each moment, and also a little break to take care of myself, clear my mind, calm myself, be like, none of that matters. Like, I can take a break. I'm fine. Sitting there meditating has brought me peace in my life. I do it daily, 10 minutes, that's it. So it's really easy for those of you who are looking for more of a holistic approach that maybe modern Western medicine isn't really your thing. Or medication, a lot of people are scared of getting on medication. So that's something that I've used. It's not for everyone, but it was for me, so I thought I would just take a chance to share that.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much.
Of course. And we do have so many CAPS events on our website. I will be there as a peer educator in my little yellow t-shirt, so please feel free to come find me. It is a great resource, and we do a lot of fun stuff. We just had our pause event this week with all of the therapy dogs, which was great. I loved it. So don't be afraid to reach out. We also have fun events besides just like going to therapy. We have like interactive events with our students too.
I'm definitely personally gonna look into that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's like a cat one too.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the pause.
I love it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think that will do it for this podcast. So thank you guys again for joining us.
Of course, yeah.
And you know that we love to hear it. Oh my God.